Bow, bow, bow. Good old boys.
Mark.
Bog beef.
Fredo.
Still got it?
Never lost.
Need a picture. All right. Just real quick. So like the last 2 weeks, I tried to get done with this tangent and I always got lost. So just to roll that one up, we got talking about Dan Carlin and this shit. Well, the point of all that stuff was that Martyr made, he's, if you wanted that crack, the certain people that had to have them 6-8 hour history podcasts for Dan Carlin, they can't get that from Dan Carlin very much anymore. They can only get 2 of those a year. So they got to go to Martyr Made. So you're never going to cancel him as long as he's the only one that serves that shit up. And people like literally they're like a sizable portion of the people that are listening to that stuff don't like Martyr Made's politics or anything. They just got to have, he's got a product that they need. You know what I'm saying?
But yeah, it's something you actually can't get that from anybody else. I know people say that about a lot of stuff, like, oh, this was a unique thing. Like this really is. Like there were podcasts that were kind of like that. Like I think the History of Rome podcast, but they're all done. They're all dead.
Right. And it's people just don't, I've heard a lot of people say there, a million people, I would say they try to do it, but they don't. All the most popular, it's funny, all the other popular history podcasts are literally people just reading Wikipedias. I hate to say it, but that's what they are. Like all the 2-hour history podcasts, they're usually attached to some website, like the history channel, the history.com podcast. It'll be like somebody reading a Wikipedia for 2 hours.
Speaking of, continue.
Yeah, no.
Chat GBT writes the scripts.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the reading Wikipedia because I gotta read one paragraph from Wikipedia. People in chat were asking why we didn't play the song "Richmond, North of Richmond," and I haven't actually heard. I'll be honest with you, I haven't actually heard the song yet.
What?
I don't know. It just never came up.
I haven't either, Merrick.
What the hell is wrong with you?
I saw people talking about it. Just never clicked on the sound on any of the things in the timeline.
Well, you guys are going to have to enjoy listening to me talk about it because you see everyone in the audience is saying, can't wait to listen to you guys talk about Richmond, North of Richmond.
Let me, I checked the Wikipedia because I thought, until just now, I thought the song was Richmond of North Richmond. It was like, I didn't really understand why, what he meant by that, but it's Richmond north of Richmond, which makes a lot more sense. Like everything between Richmond and DC is like horse farms and people who work for the U.S. government.
Right. But to explain it to people that don't live in America or whatever, that's a fancy way of saying Washington, D.C.
Well, no, it's...
That's what he's saying.
Right.
But it's more than that. It's the entire, military industrial government complex that extends from DC all the way down. There's all those, because the region, America, you can keep me honest on this, man. But that whole region of Virginia that extends up to DC is what ruined the state, right? Because it's basically all these people not from Virginia. They're not Southerners. They all moved in to work for the federal government, defense contractors, consulting firms, PR firms, all that stuff. Is that Loudoun County, Merrick? And what's the other one?
It's like Fairfax County. There's several counties. People live in Alexandria, whatever. If you live in Virginia and you don't live in Northern Virginia, you hate Northern Virginia.
How did you not listen to the song yet?
I'm sorry. If I known we were going to do homework on it, I would listen to it. But let me read this thing. I looked it up on Wikipedia to see what the guy's name was because I followed him on Twitter, Oliver Anthony. This is hilarious. This is the Wikipedia article. The unbiased online encyclopedia. The song's lyrics revolve around common right-wing talking points such as inflation, and in parenthetical, dollar ain't shit, like the lyric of the song, high taxes, in parenthetical, tax to no end, child trafficking, parenthetical, minors on an island, and welfare abuse, parenthetical, and the obese milk and welfare. It's funny, okay, high taxes and welfare abuse, you could say, yeah, they've been conservative talking points for a long time. Inflation and child trafficking, those weren't right-wing talking points until last year.
Well,
those were things that nobody liked until 2020.
Well, okay, I'll take devil's advocate because I generally agree with your sentiment, but the constant talk of inflation, right? Gold bug stuff, all that sort of thing. That was a very specific, right-wing subculture, right? It was floated around Ron Paul and that kind of stuff. So I kind of get that. Child sex trafficking, you're kind of telling on yourself by saying that's a right-wing talking point. Why do you even care about child sex trafficking? You must be some political partisan hack.
Shout out Bear about Snake Bat. We're definitely going to get to that. But yes. So I don't know. They warned us. If you were reading loony leftists 5 or 6 years ago, which by the way, there's nothing more to read anymore. They don't have any, there is no, who are the people that are writing and producing new ideas for millennial and Zoomer leftists. There aren't any. Now you can't say, look at what that son of a, who was the black guy that started doing Spider-Man or whatever. He moved to France.
Thomas Chatterton Williams.
No. He means the guy with the giant.
Yeah, you can't say it.
Yeah, he won the MacArthur Genius Grant.
Is that
Ta-Nehisi Coates?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Had to pop a can like Popeye.
Or even, and I know he wasn't like a big favorite among Chapo people. Not like they would have ever said anything he said was wrong, but even like a Zizek or no, there's no people like that. They're just, I mean, I guess this is what happens when your guy's in office. All you do is just, but they don't have anybody talking now. So there's no one to say this before now. But however, 5 or 6 years ago, what you would hear is, this is when they got going successfully. They successfully got, because there was the old meme was that like, was that left wingers were against prostitution because,
it was exploiting poor and working class women. Yeah.
Right. And because most specifically, it was all against like the pimp. There was a pimp, and the pimp was like the capitalist. And so the pimp, and like they didn't ever like before times, they never really explicitly said, actually, if you got rid of the pimp, it'd be totally fine. But that was in the logic, but that didn't really come out until 5 or 6 years ago. You start to get this stuff where they would say, actually, there's not really such thing as sex trafficking because these people like it. What's the problem? Strippers make lots of money. Prostitutes do even more. They love it. What's the problem here? Yeah.
I would only correct that by saying if you're talking about Twitter, that's more that happened in 2015 and 16 in the run up to the primary. The talking about sex work, like when it first hit and it first became a thing that kind of the loony people talked about, like that crowd, the podcast crowd, they made fun of it, but eventually, like within a year or two, they were completely absorbed into the blob. So I mean, this has been further out than that. Like we're talking 7 or 8 years now. Which I mean, that's always been a plank in, the thing we were talking about originally, the right wing meme of being against child trafficking. This is something that certain people have been on board with for a long time. Famously, like everybody in the French left signed that paper trying to get rid of the age of consent.
Yeah, and there's that. I can't remember what they're called now, so it's going to ruin this whole thing. But there's a left libertarian group in the United States. Maybe one of the listeners knows that's always been into this too. Like they're like libertarian anarchists, but which are usually in the United States means you're like super right wing, like super capitalist. But they're not. Like they're like the left wing version of that. They've always been super into that too. And I wish I could remember the name right now.
This was a joke. This is an old joke from the before time where, in the Obama era about like how libertarians were trying to get rid of the age of consent law. Like this is like a joke about them, right? That this is a kind of, and libertarians were, and like you said, in the American context, were always viewed as vaguely right wing. You don't hear that joke anymore. Someone in chat beat me to the punch about 2015, 2016. That's when Pizzagate happened, and it's the moment that pizza. So if you remember what Pizzagate was, it was the accusation that there was a child sex trafficking ring out of the Comet Pizza owned by. Was it the boyfriend of the guy, the Anita Hill guy? I think that's right. It's been a long time. And there was also accusations about John Podesta and his spirit cooking parties and that whole
his
crap.
brother's choice in artwork, which one of our listeners actually found the old Washington Post article that I thought had been like deleted from the internet and sent it to us.
Yeah, what happened then was because this became well, I'm not going to go that far.
Don't go in the basement.
Ostensibly, what happened was this is something that people, online right-wing people, start talking about, and it became a thing that if somebody went there in real life with a gun and I think, waved it around and maybe even popped the round off. When that happened, the culture war solidified. It was set. It was, well, if you think that there's such a thing as child sex trafficking, you're right wing. And since then that's just been how it is. That's just the way it's played out in American politics.
Well, you're close. What I think is a little different is they are trying to go from the it's not happening to it's good, actually, right? We're dancing on that line and kind of going back and forth right now, like in terms of the people in charge. You do hear a lot more of, if not like the child sex trafficking itself, stuff that, like, I don't know, I would consider adjacent to it. We get the it's good, actually, like certain types of, let's say, public performances designed for children that are kind of on the edge of that are, very frequently now in the media talked about as like, no, this is a good thing.
Yeah. Or various consent ideas regarding kids. It's kind of like going back to the prostitution thing. They never said that prostitution would be fine without the pimp, but if you had sort of worked back what they were saying, oh, prostitution is terrible. There's this guy, the pimp. And, they always said it that way, but, it's kind of like that. You can sort of like do the math backwards from what they're saying now, especially regarding things like consent, as if consent matters. If you're, in terms of like making decisions about what's going on to you when you're 8 years old. When you're 8 years old, there's you can't consent to anything. You shouldn't be allowed to. You shouldn't be allowed to consent to join the army when you're 8 years old. I would have joined. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was going out,
be a drummer boy.
Yeah, I was going out in the woods every day with the face paint on. I would have definitely signed up for that. However, doesn't matter. You're 8 years old. You can't consent to anything. That's yeah.
Yeah, and this is I was talking about this with people.
So hang on. The thing about libertarianism is if all libertarianism was enacted overnight at once, the result would be a very right-wing result. However, it's this total program that would sort of like, libertarianism would have a change to almost every aspect of American life. And so it matters which parts are implemented. Like, are you going to get rid of welfare, or are you going to get rid of the concept of pedophilia crimes? Because like those both have different, like those are just totally different and not really, those have totally different outcomes left and, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if you basically ended taxation and the welfare system, yeah, it would be a very interesting outcome.
But also, we could go around and just lynch people that were pedophiles, I guess. I don't know. It's it's just a bizarre, like, it makes it very hard to analyze this system sort of added piecemeal. Like, this is why it's just sort of wrong to have this, like, I don't know. You can't really analyze patching it onto the American system.
Yeah, because I think like most of the ones that are like in media and stuff, right? Like, so like people that work for Reason magazine or whatever.
Leather jackets.
Yeah, these are predominantly people that just want to be able to do drugs and not pay taxes, right? So this is like an ideological, like they picked the ideological movement they wanted to get involved in based upon like, well, I don't like paying taxes and I like smoking marijuana, so I guess this works pretty well for me. You know what I mean?
Well, every Hollywood guy would always say, well, me, yeah, you could say that socially I'm pretty liberal and I'm economically conservative, aka I don't like paying taxes.
Yeah, but also, aka there's no real social stigma to saying that you're economically conservative. So
there is now.
It's nothing like saying that you're socially.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
obviously.
You say that all the F slurs need to go in the closet and get in and lose rights and stuff like that. You can't do that.
Yeah, like it's not right. It's not even a competition. You can absolutely go out and say like, hey, I believe in economic freedom and deregulation and low taxes. And of course, I also believe in gay marriage and child drag shows and protecting trans kids, but you can't do it the other way around. That you definitely can't do that if you want to be like on TV or in the movies or something.
Yeah. Anyways, um, so let's talk about this Richmond, north of Richmond, because there's a lot to cover. There's a lot to cover. I felt overwhelmed sort of fielding stuff about this because a part of it is people like part of the problem with this with how people are taking the song is that they're too hungry. Like there should be more than just this one fellow to place everything on, because like there are people like, I mean, I was having to break down and explain like how music works. A couple of people sort of took it the wrong way that supported Mr. Oliver, but like the whole concept about performance is a big thing. People felt insulted when I brought this up. So musical song, this is really basic, but we don't really get stuff like this anymore. And if you don't play music, this kind of thing may be alien to you. So like what is the purpose of a song? Well, it's normal. It's to get something out of you. Now it could be different things. So some music is just made to make you dance. That's it. You just make you shake your ass. That's fine. That's the whole point of the song. Nothing wrong with that. Some music, especially like a ballad or something, is supposed to make you feel something. And it's not like a psyop. And you don't have to write the song, and it doesn't have to be about you. Let me give you I know people, when I said that to people like, what the hell? Like, what are you talking? That's crazy. Okay, here's something. Did you ever hear 9 Inch Nails play Hurt? And then you hear Johnny Cash play Hurt. Johnny Cash didn't play Hurt, didn't write that song, but the way he performed it, and his performance, which is a skill, it took him years. It's a talent issue to be able to perform a song and make people openly weep. They would openly weep when they would hear Johnny Cash perform this song, not the guy that wrote it, but and that is important. That is like really, really important. And it's not like a fakeness. The thing about like, you gotta take the whole fakeness thing in stride, because like a song is not real life. Like a song about a cowboy, like there's a song about a cowboy and there's being a cowboy. So being a cowboy is like doing agricultural labor. Okay, that's different than a song about being a cowboy. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this like, so for example, I mean, so this is an important thing about it. So just making you feel a certain way. If that song makes you feel a certain way, that guy killed it. That's awesome. That took him years and years of practice to get somebody to feel a certain way when he plays a song. That's hard. It's very, very, very hard. If you're out of tune, people don't feel that way, etc. It's very difficult. And that also goes with how you present yourself. So, Johnny Cash and Hank Williams were not cowboys. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. They were not cowboys. Like 99% of these country artists were not cowboys. But it's part of the presentation. You see, when like, here's an example. I believe that's the video of the Oliver video. I believe that was done at his house. You can see there's a deer blind in the back, dogs are in the yard, etc. However, if you told me that was not at his house and that was at like his manager's house or something, I wouldn't be like, this is a psyop, man, because the video is part of the performance, and it's different seeing the video there. Let's say this boy lived in a shitty apartment. Well, the video wouldn't really hit the same as a shitty apartment. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. I get what you're saying.
That's important. That's like, this is for you. This is for you. You're not just sort of passing this guy on the street and sort of observing his life and how real or not it is. This is for you. When the video looks a certain way, you're going to enjoy it that much more. You get that much more out of it looking a certain way. A song is not real life. It's a song. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, I get what you're saying.
Well, hit me back. You sound like you're uncomfortable with that.
Well, man, I'm not uncomfortable with that. I mean, I agree. A song is not real life. You don't have to be a cowboy to play the song, but it does help if you're living in the holler when you're singing about the holler.
Look, I don't know anything about music. It's kind of like acting, right? Like you're going to be better at acting if you're from the holler, as Merrick would say, someone from that background. If you have like when people act, my understanding is they draw from real life experiences to try and like simulate those emotions. I imagine music is similar in that regard.
Yes. Yeah. When people are on set, like if they're feeling upset, they think about like when they got some girl broke up with him or something like that. Yeah. Okay. So by the way, so that's just one part of it. Now I'm not saying it's not real. What I'm saying is like, just like you got to take a song as a song. I mean, like don't go insane. Like, cause what's going to happen? Like I already seen people found pictures of his manager and they said, well, this is a psyop. He's got a manager. Well, let me go. Like when you were driving home tonight, you drove past some shitty bar and there's some band playing on there on Saturday night. Let me tell you, they have a manager. That doesn't mean that you're this or you're that. Okay.
Really at a basic level, it just means you found some lawyer in your small town willing to look at your contracts for you. Bobby, if you need a manager, I'll take care of it for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these guys also try to promote them and stuff like that. However, I mean, you know, the thing about the, like if it wasn't his house, I'm sure it was his house. And
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he was living in a crappy apartment in like the East Richmond or whatever. That wouldn't matter because I looked at the lyrics of the song and you can't. There's no way you can twist what he said to not be, for lack of a better term, right wing. Right? The sentiments he has, they're political sentiments. And he made them in the most like brazen terms. He did not. Let me just, if you haven't heard the song, here's
like you.
If this is really the lyrics of the song. If you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bag of fudge rounds. Now. There ain't no lipstick you can put on that pig and make it sound like, well, actually what he's talking about is the struggle of the international workers.
Let me tell you, I could not perform that lyric and still make it like soulful. You know what I'm saying? That is skill.
Yeah, it's like a bluegrassy kind of song, right?
Yeah, which by the way, people asked about that. So this song, now this depends on who you ask, but like from a technical definition, this song is not bluegrass. Like bluegrass has like a technical definition that involves like you have to have many players and stuff like that. It doesn't matter. It just means that this is just a guy and his guitar. You would not really call this bluegrass as such. However, I mean like you could take someone in a leading bluegrass band, take them and their guitar, it becomes not bluegrass. However, it certainly has that sort of flavor. Yeah. Okay. Let's get into talking about this fucking, God, who is that damn guy? Woody Guthrie and Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger. Because this comes up every fucking time a political song comes out from the South. You know, I get this feeling because I kind of get this. Like there's a lot of this sort of new right people that it's focused on New York City. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I have noticed that as well. Yeah.
Let me tell you, like, in my head to this day, we have friends in New York City. When New York City enters my brain, I immediately think about Italian restaurants with the red flannel tables and mafia movies. Like, that's still New York City, like, to me. Everything else, like, I don't like like all this other shit. Like, wait, well, that's New York City. That's the place in the mafia movies. Oh yeah, I love that. You know what I'm saying? That's still New York City to me. That's like all it is. Basically, I mean, because I've never been there, I don't know about all this other stuff. Obviously, if you live in New York City, you're like, that shit ain't been there for 45 years. What are you talking about? That doesn't explain anything about the life of New York City. You with me?
Yeah, and no, that's a really bad thing if that's true. I mean, I've heard both ways. I've heard people say that yes, that New York City still exists, it just doesn't exist in the same places that it did before. Like if we talked to Stefano Forte, he would tell you, yeah, that you can still find all that in New York City.
Right, but here's the comparison. So to them, they're like, the South, is that the place with the coal mines and the strikes, where they had the guys go on strike against the coal mines and they fought the battle on the Hill? You know what I'm saying? Because someone like me, I'm the guy in Queens that's saying, like, I've never been to a fucking Italian restaurant, blah blah blah. Because let me tell you, I ain't never lived on no mountain, and I'm from the deep South. The deep South. That stuff means nothing to me. Now, it certainly did happen in the South. It certainly made a huge impression on people, just like mafia movies did about New York City. So I can't just say that doesn't matter, but I can say there's a whole lot more to the South than coal miners and strikers. Well, I understand there's like less than 50,000 people that still work in the coal mine business.
Yeah, I mean, they say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there, right? That's like the famous. You know what that was they were able to. That was this thing they did in the early 20th century, and it wasn't entirely fake, because like there were, especially out west, there were like a lot of these movements that involved, you know, corn pone people.
Wait, real quick. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to get ugly, but just look up the real name of Ramblin' Jack Elliott. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Pete Seeger was from New York City, and Woody Guthrie was from out west somewhere. That ain't got nothing to do with the South. Nothing to do with us. I digress. It wasn't fake, but.
Well, every single Chapo the guy this week posted, that's not real country.
Yeah.
We ain't heard of no Woody Guthrie. They love that fucking Woody Guthrie, man. I've never heard him on the radio. Nobody, I guarantee you, I go ask all my neighbors. They don't know who the hell Woody Guthrie is.
Nobody cares about Woody Guthrie. What they're doing and it's what they've always done, and they still do this. Like, you know, if you talk to them about, well, you had a great example earlier in the show. You were talking about the sex workers, right? When they talk about sex work and how it should be legalized, they take, like, you know, these high level cam girls or OnlyFans people or whatever who
are
chick
like with a Berkeley degree that gets on cam 4 hours a week.
Right, and there are a couple of them. They exist. But that's not the experience of being a sex worker. The experience of being a sex worker is you get trafficked from Bulgaria and somebody took your passport and you have to, you're turned out and you get
hooked on drugs.
Yeah, you get VD, you get hooked on drugs, and you get beaten. That's the experience of being a sex worker. But they don't want to advertise that. What they want is a poster child, increasingly literally poster children when, you know, they have drag kids. These people, like, you know, the Battle of Blair Mountain and Joe Hill and these people, they were great because they were, you could say, look, this is what our movement is about. It's about red-blooded American working men. And there's the people over in Harlan County who are digging coal day and night. Black soot on their faces blackened with soot and all this stuff. They're just like you and me. But that's not their movement, and it never has been. Like their movement has always been a high-low coalition, and the low part isn't coal miners, and we know that now. You don't. I don't. If you listen to this podcast and you don't believe that, I don't know. You might have lost the plot. Like it's a movement of like intellectuals and public bureaucrats and lumpins. That's it. That is their political coalition. But that's not. You don't want to advertise that. And you know, they've got a lot of help over the years. Like for example, they're when they took over America in the 30s, the FDR with the FDR. Like FDR was really lucky because he was able to do all these things and then immediately go into a global war that destroyed the industrial capacity of the rest of the planet, so that we would get a boom time of like 10 to 15 years after all the seeds that he planted. And for that brief moment, like regular crackers were dealt into the system. Like people in my family loved FDR, and for good reason.
We all did.
Right. He made our lives materially better.
I mean, my dad knew the guy that was like the guy that ran the Republican Party in my town. And I watched an interview with him, and he said when he came here, there had not been a Republican in this town, and much less this whole area of the South, like 100 years. I mean, since all that, like everybody loved the New Deal in the South.
Well, yeah, but I mean, before that, the Democratic Party ran the South until, well, the next guy I was talking about. Here's what happened: some people got dealt in, and he was able to do that. He broke the cardinal rule of patronage, by the way, that we always talk about. He added a bunch of people to his political coalition. He did hand out goodies to almost everybody, and you can't do that, right? You're not supposed to do that. But when if you're willing to finance it with huge amounts of debt and like confiscating people's gold and changing the entire monetary system, you can do that, and it works for a period. And hey, if you get us involved in a war that destroys the rest of the world's ability to produce anything, you're gonna ride high for like 15, 20, 25 years. What happened to the next big guy in their political coalition? That was Lyndon Johnson in the Great Society. And what did he do? He dealt our asses right back out of the political coalition. He saw the writing was on the wall. We got to prune some people out of this. So there was this period of time, we'll say between like 1932 and the mid 60s. So 30 years, which a young country, it's a decent period of time where like this was a thing, where we were in this coalition. But it was the blink of an eye. And it was only long enough to fundamentally change all the structures of our government to facilitate something that everything the guys Oliver Anthony's complaining about, you can trace back to Lyndon Johnson. And Lyndon Johnson couldn't have done any of that without FDR. So that's the story of the Democratic Party, the modern Democratic Party in the United States. And to roll it all the way back and finally get to my point after all this rambling, like the coal miner guys, they existed. They were important. They were part of the political coalition at one time, but they were never what it was about. They were never part of the power arrangement. They were never meant to be. The idea that we're going to have this, I mean, they did the same thing in Europe at the same time, and it worked a little bit better. Like you factory workers, you're gonna decide how the country's run. Your unions are going to be. We're going to transition the unions to be in charge of the country, and we're going to have.
They had the miners in North England, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm thinking more like the myriad of industrial worker revolts that. Well, like part of it led to the Soviet Union and stuff like that. Those people weren't ever in charge. They were never meant to be in charge. Like it was people like Lenin, intellectuals, former failed nobles.
That's the point of the whole Vanguard theory, right? I mean, basically, is that like you couldn't really have those people necessarily really be in charge.
But but you can't sell this to people this way. You can't say, you know what, you should. Well, I shouldn't say you can't do that, because they kind of do this now. They straight up just tell you, as a white male, you need to stand aside or whatever. But that's not really a good way to get your foot in the door. You have to say, well, actually, our movement is all about you. It's all about the local coal miners or the railroad workers or whatever. It's all about you guys. But but that's never who it's really been. And his complaints in the song are these rich men north of Richmond, aka the people who from all the way from Henrico County up to the border, these people who have these beautiful, expensive horse farms, and they work in D.C. and commute from like Arlington and Fairfax and whatever. Like these people and the 300-pound person eating the ring dings on welfare, like they're in a political coalition and they're fucking everything up. And if you're in the middle, you are getting squeezed, because that is what happens when you are on the outside looking in against the ruling coalition. And they're not. This isn't like a situation where you can necessarily vote your way out of it. And like this is part of the reason why nobody would have cared about this song 4 or 5 years ago. It would not have been national news. It would have never made it to the top of the charts. There's a reason for this.
Yeah. Well, it's the coalition thing is important, because this goes to like the heart of all the dissident rights who I think has generally been against this guy. It's every homosexual person in dissident right I've seen really didn't care for this song.
Yeah. Yeah, you take this one. I was about to go in this direction, but you go for it, Five Reef.
That's a huge section of the dissident right, and they didn't like this song, which well, I don't know why the Democrat Party is the only people in the world that understand the C word coalition. That's the thing, it's the these are the guys that are like, I'm at my second year at Harvard Law, and you're saying that being a plumber is a good thing. You're telling me to throw it all away and become a plumber. No. Okay. This is the thing. Like, Joe Biden doesn't want to live in the ghetto. He doesn't want to live in the ghetto. He doesn't want to join the Crips or the Bloods. That's not like the experience that him or his children are going to have. However, somehow he understands that there's like a coalition thing.
One of his children might like to hang out together and hit the pipe, but most of them don't want to do that.
I don't know why this is impossible. This is just totally totally impossible for people on the right wing to understand. Like, if you are a gay guy in Manhattan, like maybe the stuff about like maybe this song or something like that, like you don't have to like I don't understand. I just don't understand the approach to it.
Come on, yeah, you do.
Why do they feel crowded? Like, here's the thing: there isn't enough of you. There is way like. I need to produce like a brochure or something that shows like who are the numbers that fills out the Republican Party, because this is the problem. Like, this is a huge problem. I saw this last time. We saw people say like, well, there's millions of Republicans that live in LA. Well, there's 30 million people that live in LA. There's millions of anything in LA. You don't matter.
You're taking them at the problem is why you don't understand this is you're taking what they say at face value, and you can't do that. You have to look at people. You have to do exactly what you said earlier and work your way back. Like, what do these people want? Well, I know you're familiar. we'll just put it this way. You're familiar with, like, there's like a DSA type of person who's like, oh yeah, after the revolution, I'm going to, and the meme is like, I'm going to be an anime inspector or whatever, right? Like we need this political movement to succeed because I need somebody to pay me $100,000 a year for my philosophy degree. And that's how we're going to make this happen. And you might pepper in a bunch of crap about, you know, like how the workers of the world or whatever, but like the people who go to DSA meetings, they're not workers, they're organizers and students and the children of rich people who aren't quite as rich as their parents were. That's such a joke at this point that everybody, like, if you're listening to this and you don't know that, just go on Twitter and like look at these people.
They are less sneering at the people that they're supposed to be serving than the right wing side.
Right, but you gotta let me finish what I'm saying. So these people that you're talking about, they're the same kind of creature. Like they have these things that these goals that they want to have, and they need that to happen. They need this whatever. I don't even know what you would call at this point their revolution to happen, so that the hierarchy gets reshuffled around and they're put on top. The reason that they have to sneer, which it's funny, funny person to bring up, but Yarvin talks about is like, you know, contempt is only an emotion you can have when you're above somebody. So these people can't really have contempt for the chuds because they're not above the chuds. Like a lib can have contempt for chuds because by the social hierarchy they're on top. Well, if you're a right-wing dissident NRX person, you have no fucking standing to look down on anybody. You're pretty much just the cockroach that hasn't been squashed by the shoe yet. And if you don't believe me, ask Mr. Richard Host or whatever. Ask him about how that works. But my point here is these people, they have to be hostile towards the coalition because you're wrong. There is a group of people on the right who understand the C word, who understand the coalition. Donald Trump was one of them. Donald Trump Biden is an exception. He's far more libertine than Barack Obama was. He's not I had a really religious relative who passed away since then, but she told me, you know, Donald Trump's not a godly man, but he can do things in his political office that will actually be godly. And for example, he could appoint people to the Supreme Court who would end Roe versus Wade. Trump would go to the prayer meetings and talk about this stuff, and he would be pretty upfront. Yeah, I've been divorced a bunch of times. I'm kind of sleazy, whatever. My opinion on abortion ain't yours, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to put somebody on the court who's going to change the law for you because you're part of my coalition. Would you like fries with that? He understood that. These people, it's not that they don't understand that. It's that. Here's what Donald Trump.
But they functionally don't understand. I've heard that thing you just explained. I mean, I have heard thought leaders on distant right who have said, well, like the point of that, of Donald Trump himself, the leader, not being a Southern Baptist guy from the South. That means therefore. This all the actual voters need to be like Trump. You need to tell all the people, all the Republicans to fuck off with your social conservatism, blah, blah, blah. Like just insane stuff, insane stuff.
He never did that. He did the opposite.
Of course.
What you would do if you were a Republican politician who you had after the reshuffling in the 60s and we'll go all the way to the early 80s.
Mason Dixon dweller says, yeah, it's funny. A bunch of unnamed people were bashing the song, calling it low culture. Well, I mean, once again, how do you think Joe Biden feels about rap music? But he doesn't say it that way because he has a deal make with people.
You're giving those people too much credit. They don't have any standing to say that this is low culture. They don't get to decide what culture is. The people who decide what culture is would put them away in a camp and execute them if they had the ability to do so. They have views that these people despise more than anything. They might hate us abstractly more than them, but the things, if you had them in a room and they just said, here's what I believe, they'd arrest them. They put them in jail. So like you don't get to look down on anybody. You don't decide what culture is if you're these people.
What I'm saying is, like, if you regularly attend the opera or something like that, and so you hear like country music or something, you say, oh, this is really low stuff. You're not really, well, that doesn't really bother me. However, if you want to, like, say in, like, you know, if you want to tell your friends that at the bathhouse, that's fine. But like, if you're trying to talk about politics and you're saying like, well, fuck the people listening to this, you're like,
okay.
Well, the issue is they want to be accepted by the Richmond, north of Richmond, though. You know what I mean? Like, they want to be living there doing all that same stuff. They just want those people to accept the one or two weird, you know, things that they believe that are outside of what those people believe.
Well, that
really is only one or two things. You know what I mean?
No, that is really perfect, because, you know, that I've always said that's the problem with Hanania as well, is that, so Hanania's thing is that, like, he would much rather be a liberal Democrat, but like he you know, of course he thinks, well, I don't understand what these liberal Democrats get out of their alliance with, say, blacks. It doesn't make any sense to him. And of course he doesn't, like, because of course that the only thing that he can't understand is political coalitions. You don't get it. Like, you don't understand that. How the hell do you think they control these cities? You know, our finger guns guy, like, of course he just literally thinks like that the black people terrify elite libs, and that's the only reason why they sort of do things for them. That's it.
No, I'm not done. Look, the reason they behave the way they do. Well, let's take an example of someone who is a actual conservative leader who might be a fellow traveler in some respects. Lindsey Graham. Everybody knows that Lindsey Graham is gay. It's an open joke, right? He's a closeted gay man, but he is a senator from South Carolina, so he remains a closeted gay man. He will give you the speech about family values and all that, and you know he wants to funnel money to Ukraine, blah blah blah, all that crap. But he's gonna play the hand he's dealt, because he has to, because this is part of the coalition. The coalition was the Chamber of Commerce in the Southern, and not just the Baptists, just evangelical Christians, just Christians in general, rural people too. Like, all these people, like, they're socially conservative. So you have to publicly be socially conservative. Privately, we know they weren't, because this is what they would constantly be. Like, Ronald Reagan is one of the most beloved conservative figures for boomers and people, even though, yeah, we hate him, whatever. He was, in his personal life, terrible. He was divorced, ran around with his wife, had a very, very non-conservative social background. Doesn't matter. Because he was the leader of that coalition. You didn't hear him going talking about polyamory or whatever. You didn't hear him talking about my wife's really good at oral sex. No, you don't do that, because that's not who you are. The people we're talking about, they cannot abide that, because it would require them to modify their behavior, and they would have to conform to the social mores of the senior partner in the coalition. The actual people with the power in the coalition would be the social conservatives. And that would force them to admit that they weren't actually superior to them. If you have to hide your views from people, if you have to pretend that you are something that you're not because you'll be punished for it, that puts you lower on the hierarchy. And they know this, because they uniquely know this, because it's been such a big part of their ideology. Like, if you read what Yarvin says,
who totally understands this, who came on this show and told us about the parable of the two types of people working at the State Department.
Yeah, he'll be straight up with them that his witch hunter analogy is the best one. Like, if you can throw an accusation of somebody being a witch and burn them at the stake, you have power over them. it would be acknowledging that actually those chuds that they despise are the senior partners in the coalition that can never do that. So what they're trying to do is force people to just say, okay, yeah, we'll just go along with whatever you say because you're the elves, you know better, you're the only ones you're capable of ruling. It's not that they, well, maybe some of them don't understand how political coalitions work, but they don't want to be in a coalition. They want to be handed power. They want power handed over to them. And there are a lot of DSA type people who are the same way. Look at what happened with Bernard Sanders, and look at the way some of them reacted to his having the primary. I won't say stolen, but having their political hopes dashed.
Well, this is what I mean. Frankly, this is a huge problem for like the class first leftists.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck.
They just, and because like, I mean, that's I don't even, there's very few people that even try that anymore, but like, clearly you don't offer black people anything and you have to, you have to, or you are, or you definitely ain't going to have control of the cities and shit like that. So yeah,
they moved South Carolina to the front to the front of the bus for the primary season in 2024, and they'll keep doing that. And that just means that really Bernie Sanders could ignore black people when he was just a guy in Vermont because they don't have black people in Vermont. I mean, and also like if now. You wouldn't do this for obvious reasons, but if you were the Democratic Party and you say, let's say we want to have the primary system be designed to give us the person who would have the best chance at winning the election in 2024 or 2028 or whatever, you would say, okay, we need to more heavily weight the delegates in these southern red states that are never going to vote for our candidate, but they gave Hillary Clinton the nomination or whatever. So like Joe Biden's a joke almost out of the primary in 2020 until South Carolina and Mr. Clyburn delivers it to him on a silver platter and he anoints him as president of the United States. You wouldn't like that's a weird. It's if you're just looking at this like this Dan Carlin space alien perspective, it's weird that there's like 12% of the population. But statistically, like some of the poorest people, like you would think would be the least influential, and their votes are what decides who's going to be the Democratic nominee, and by extension, probably going to be president, because of the way the Electoral College may or may not turn out in years to come. Like that's a very strange thing to happen, but it makes perfect sense from the dictator's handbook perspective. You have this group of people who it's a reliable block. You can give them a lot of stuff, and it works because you can. If 90% of them vote for you, you can offer them whatever because they're only 12%.
Oh, so they're amazing clients.
Yeah, you run into problems with like they are now, like affirmative action. That's a problem because as the pie gets smaller. You don't want to hand out as many pieces, and so they'll scale some of it back. But in the end, that's who they are. And on returning to the subject, like the class first people, in a lot of the stuff they talked about in the Sanders campaign, not necessarily the stuff that he talked about. Like, well, one big thing he talked about was healthcare, universal healthcare, which. That does not resonate with South Carolina voters at all. They're not the people who are voting in the South Carolina Democratic Party primary. They ain't worried about universal health care.
You already got that.
Yeah, and then you stuff like
there were a ton of memes about that, right? The morning after the primary.
Yeah, the one where he's the meme is he's telling black guys you're going to get universal health care. Black guys say that shit's already free, bro. By the way, the South Carolina black people are the greatest clients. Like, I mean, it's funny how you could tell that the patronage math is such a good system that all the power, like the most powerful group in the United States, not just black people, because the thing is about the South Carolina black people is they have to actually vote. So like with votes in like Philadelphia and stuff like that, that's you can do stuff there with like people that go door to door and knock. But the South Carolina black people that are they are rural. So they have to act. They still like Jim Clyburn still has to give them a reason to actually go vote. Really, he really does.
Well, it's like that's why there's a lot of NGO groundwork, like the Souls to the Polls thing, where you would organize, you would organize people at church to give buses for people to vote and stuff like that. That is what you do. That's literally ground game. Something that was talked about a lot in previous elections, but was not at all mentioned in 2020, and I have a bad feeling that they're not going to talk about it in 2024 either. That stuff's important. I know that there's the idea that, well, none of it matters because they'll just print ballots or whatever. Maybe, but also maybe just in case that's not true, you should invest some of that small donor money into actually having people on the ground, getting people to vote.
We should probably come back to this next week. I mean, this story will continue to go.
Yeah.
We do have more stories to cover. I just hope he sells. He gets some money. He just needs to get paid. If you like the song, buy the song. Go on iTunes, whatever, buy the song. That's very important because remember, like I know that people are very focused on him being this political guy and stuff, but he's also an artist. He's also just a guy with a guitar. Just like Taylor Swift or any of these other people. So and that needs to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
All right, we'll talk about him more next week after Merrick deigns to listen to the song. Now people are I guess we'll talk about the president next, but people are also wanting me to talk about the Gamers Nexus situation, and I did see something else. I don't know. You guys,
I saw that video. Yeah, I know what you're talking about there.
That's a great thing. But I think we should probably talk about the president next. I saw some other story. I'll be looking for it. I'm sorry. The other story to cover slipped my mind, but I'll be looking for it. Let's talk about the president.
Grand jury returns indictments in Trump Georgia case. I believe this is indictment number 4 this year. Trump indicted on 13 charges, including solicitation of violation of the oath by a public officer, aka he allegedly asked an elected official to do something illegal, conspiracy to commit forgery in the first degree, and he was also, this is what makes the story interesting to me. They hit him up with a RICO charge in Georgia. And RICO is a racketeering charge. It's it's an accusation. Go ahead.
State law RICO charge, by the way. They're not. It's a Georgia state law. I looked into this. Georgia state law RICO is different than federal RICO. Much easier to prove and used much more frequently. Apparently, in Georgia, they use their state law version of RICO like all the time for anything and everything. They used it a few years ago. Apparently, a bunch of teachers in like a high school were doing like a cheating scandal with the students, and they got charged with Georgia RICO. I believe convicted too. So, I'm not a Georgia lawyer, but based on like the little bit of research I did on this, it appears like it would have been almost more unusual if he didn't, because it was in Georgia. If he didn't get charged as part of a RICO thing, they just throw it at everybody there.
Side note on RICO, like RICO is bullshit. Everyone knows it. Like the whole point of RICO was like, okay, we're just going to look the other way and pretend the Constitution doesn't matter because we have this really special case with like, the John Gotti's and stuff. But we're just going to use it to get rid of these guys.
Yeah, the Racketeer, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act and the state RICO, whatever, is different. The idea is you suspend, you basically suspend the Constitution and go after an organization and throw everybody in prisons.
Under RICO, you can be convicted of a crime you didn't do.
Yeah,
legally.
You were just part of the group. You were part of the group that did a crime, so you are by virtue of being related to them in some way, you can go to prison. Like, it's ironic. Giuliani was one of the people charged, and Giuliani got to start going after the mob and putting them away on RICO charges. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Fredo.
No, I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, that's all correct. It is bullshit, but look, it's a big story. Obviously, we should be talking about it, and we are. But at this point, it's like I just kind of assume every few months he's gonna get indicted somewhere for something, whatever in that particular jurisdiction is the easiest thing to indict him for. He'll go up 5 points in the polls after the indictment. That'll continue to happen until the election. He'll win the primary in a landslide and then lose the general worse than last time. So like at this point, it's almost like I feel like the script has been written. Like it's a done deal right now. But I'm open to being wrong about this one.
We're not going to put that in the trailer for this episode. Okay, let's look at there are 19 people who are being charged in Georgia. This is the real escalation, in my opinion. Yeah, like Trump has 4 indictments. He's going to be in court constantly. He could get convicted on any one of them, and it's going to be a nightmare logistically. There are two reasons why I do think this matters more than some of the other charges. A, it's a state charge, meaning he can't pardon himself. He can't be pardoned by whatever. If somebody else becomes president, they can't just pardon him. Even the governor of Georgia can't pardon him. In Georgia, the governor doesn't have that power. He can only submit it to a board and say this is his recommendation. So there's no one person who can step in and say, okay, no, we're not doing this. Other than maybe the prosecutor, and she's not going to do that because this is like a career move for her. 2, the RICO part and having 20 people involved in this means you're not just going after one guy. You're saying we're going to go after everybody who helped them. We're doing a purge. This is a purge. This is literally a purge. But you can't really, when you arrest Trump or whatever, you can't really call that a purge, right? That's a prescription maybe, but it's not a purge. This is a purge. That is a big escalation. Here, let me read the list of the 19 people. President Trump, obviously. Rudy Giuliani, everybody knows that. John Eastman, one of his lawyers, he is indicted in another case, right? Or a co-conspirator. Okay. Mark Meadows.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure.
Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows. Kenneth Chesebro, I never heard of him. Jeffrey Clark, he was an attorney. Jenna Ellis, Stalin Smith, Robert Cheeley, Michael Roman, David Schaefer, a couple other lawyers were heard. Sidney Powell, I'm sure you know her. She was famous, his lead lawyer for the 2020 election.
Yeah, lifelong Democrat too.
Yeah. And then Misty Hand, blah, 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 a bunch of other people. A Georgia bail bondsman who sought to illegally breach election equipment at the Coffee County Board of Elections registration office, Scott Graham Hall. This is funny because the Coffee County Board of the Coffee County government invited them to come look at their voting equipment. Basically, people who run Coffee County said, yes, we agree there was some kind of election chicanery. We think that the election machines were vulnerable to hacking. We're going to let you come look at them. So they're charging that guy with a crime. He's part, even though he was invited there by the elected representatives. Of course, none of this matters because the people who, the county government doesn't have any, the state government ultimately can decide whatever they want here. It's federalist. We had a discussion with somebody months back about federalism, and people don't seem to understand this. While it's true that the states have some powers that the federal government can't encroach on, they have things that they can do. For example, you can indict the president of the United States and convict him and throw him in prison, and nobody in the federal government can really do anything about it. They can't pardon him. They can't change anything other than, I guess, the Supreme Court. But that's not true of the counties. In most states, the counties are completely under the thumb of the state. they can do almost anything. Would you agree with that, Fredo?
Yeah, that's the norm. They're just instrumentalities of the state, and they're just totally subservient to the state government. There's not generally like a federalism type system, at the between the states. So I mean, some states have what are called home rule acts that do reserve certain powers to the municipalities or counties, but those acts themselves can be repealed, right? And it's not even totally like a right wing, left wing issue. I don't know. We won't go too far into this because it'll take us off the main topic, but Montana passed the same law that California did, banning single family zoning the other day because they have like a so-called housing crisis, but the YIMBYs were actually very, very successful out there. So like in Montana now, because of an action from the state government, your city or county cannot control its own zoning anymore. The state government usurped all that. Just a recent example of that sort of thing.
So why is this important? Because obviously states still have a lot of power, and the people on the right dissidents don't ever acknowledge this, which is strange, because this is like the last locus of control that you really have. This is really the only place that you have actual power anymore. Why wouldn't you be laser focused on this? There is an exception, and it actually, I think wasn't the jogger guy in Ahmaud Arbery. He was in Georgia too, right? The federal government can step in and if they think you were in violation of civil rights law. Like, of course, another way you can suspend the Constitution. You just say, you violated someone's civil rights. So I guess if Vivek Ramaswamy or whatever becomes president, he can accuse the Fulton County District Attorney of violating Trump's civil rights and throw her in jail, like they threw that prosecutor in there. But when you're talking about these RICO statutes, going after his lawyers, possibly going after elected officials, I think this should be the next frontier in American politics, where you're going to be trying to like throw your political enemies in jail. And I don't mean that in like the abstract sense, like, well, we don't like Trump. But I mean, like, if you're a red state, you should be looking into how you can throw the Soros DA in prison. Like, if the biggest city in your state has a Soros DA who's letting people go, like, run free, you should be looking into how you can do that tomorrow.
Or you should just be charging people in blue states with crimes for stuff that they've done that have spilled over into your state, and then just like they'll drag Donald Trump into jurisdictions where he doesn't live. You know what I mean? To go, like, they should just be doing that. Like, you could just charge, I don't know. Like, I can't think of a really good example of that right now. You know what I mean? But
this was a civil case, but man, I just remember the thing I wanted to ask you about, and this is on topic. There was a case recently in Montana where some young people sued the state, saying that one of their state laws, it was framed as anti-environmental law. That law violated their human rights because of climate change, and the judge agreed, and Montana was held liable for committing, like, I don't know, a grievous psychic harm on these people because it didn't do exactly what the EPA said it should do. So that, like, here's an easy fix. The people in, I don't know, Cobb County, Georgia, or whatever, Harlan County, Kentucky, Page County, Virginia, like, the things that your Soros DA did in Richmond negatively impact these people. So you need to be arrested, extradited to the courthouse, and put in front of a jury of 12 people.
Well, surely one of these guys that gets let off, they go commit a crime somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a good one. Or do the thing. It's limited. It's not for criminal stuff, but Illinois just did a thing that I think when you're suing the state government, you now must sue in Cook County or one other county. They designated 2 counties as like the exclusive venue for either all lawsuits against the state or a significant number. Like, you could do the same thing. Like, you could say, like, if you're Georgia and they have what appear to be like terrible Republicans in Georgia, like Raffensperger or whatever. But like if they had real Republicans there at the state level, they could just say, okay, well, like all these sort of crimes, you pick the most rural county in the state and you say like all that gets tried there. You know what I mean? Or like, like if you're suing the state for a Second Amendment violation, or you know what I mean? Something like that, or your municipality, that gets tried there. The opposite of what Illinois is doing.
To give you an idea of what Brian Kemp, what Georgia's statewide officials are, Brian Kemp, the Republican governor of Georgia, said today, the 2020 election in Georgia was not stolen. For nearly 3 years now, anyone with evidence of fraud has failed to come forward under oath and prove anything in a court of law. Our elections in Georgia are secure, accessible, and fair, and will continue to be so as long as I'm governor. The future of our country is at stake in 2024, and that must be our focus. He said this in response to something that Donald Trump saying that actually there was fraud in 2020 and this prosecution of him is illegitimate. A word on this just politically. Brian Kemp, people have been complaining about how like every time the last 2 weeks we've done podcast, like a live stream, we had to take it down because I fed posted or something someone was supposed to say. I'm not going to do that here, but like this is treachery. There's no reason a Republican state official in Georgia should be saying anything other than this is a witch hunt. You should not be arresting Donald Trump. This is outrage. I'm going to do everything I can. You shouldn't be saying, yeah, the election wasn't stolen. Even if you don't think that, even if that casts you in a bad light, you don't need to say that right now. This is absolutely a huge political betrayal. Brian Kemp should be done in Georgia politics from now on. I'm not saying that's going to happen. Because what these people think is going to happen is they think they're going to retake. They have been saying this openly. There was a news article about it today about how some of them were celebrating because now we're going to get the party back. If that happens, like if this does work, if these like the Chamber of Commerce people just go right on back to running the Republican Party and they succeed in throwing Trump in jail and disempowering everybody, and people still vote for them, you are you are hopeless. Like anybody who's like, I say this as somebody who I don't even really want Trump to be the nominee in 2024. But if you say anything other than this is outrageous, you should probably be put in prison for trying to do this. This is horrible. Your motives are like evil. That's not consistent with somebody who is in political opposition to the people who did this. You're collaborating with them.
This is a side thing, but I don't know if people know this. I didn't really know this till I really thought about it a while ago. But I mean, it should be obvious. But Georgia, loosely, and then more specifically, Atlanta is the capital of the South. It shouldn't be. I don't like Atlanta, but it's true.
No, it's not.
What is? What is?
There ain't no capital of the South.
Okay, well then it is. I mean, you can't say that and then say, well, there is none. No, it is. I love to see biggest cities in the South. Okay, so number one is DC. So that's not going to happen. That's not really the South. Number two is Miami. That's not going to happen. That's not really the South. Number three is Atlanta.
Yeah, no.
It's true, man. I know it hurts, but it's true.
Who cares? Like, who cares the population? The people in Atlanta don't consider, like, most people who live there, they don't think of themselves as Southern. So who cares?
Well, no, I mean, of course not. But I mean, that's
yeah. What's the capital of the Ulster Irish people? They don't even have cities.
Yeah,
you don't have to have. This is bullshit.
Saying, no, I'm not saying that it's good. I'm not saying it's good or bad. What I'm saying is that this is where the biggest money place is.
The capital of the South is Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah.
Next question.
All right. Let's anyways, you got anything else in this? We want to go to I've got a quick one before we go to Gamers Nexus.
Yeah, just two things about this is about the other indictments. I saw this in the news. They were back-to-back hits. Manhattan judge refuses to recuse himself from the Biden case despite from the Trump case despite donations to Biden. Judge Juan Merchan is the guy who's handling the New York State case, and he donated to Biden. I believe it's his daughter that also worked for a company that made videos for the Biden campaign. Well, whatever. Judge, and here's another headline, totally a different case. Judge in Trump J6 trial, this is a federal one, worked at the law firm that repped Russia's hoax Fusion GPS tied to Hillary's emails. Judge Tanya S. Shutkon, I don't know. You can Google the prosecutor for Atlanta, and you've known the big fat Alvin Bragg guy. Interesting. Just Google it. I wish I had thought now to just like take like a little collage of just the photos of the people who were involved in his prosecution. It would be interesting. We can move on now.
All right. Let's go. First off, I mean, God bless Internet Archive. I don't know when they're going to kill that, but like when you're doing stories and like, especially as many stories we have to do, obviously we can't pay the Washington Post, New York Times, all these people. Like you can still just get the story from Internet Archive.
Did Chuck Wendig win or lose his case against them?
I don't know.
Did you know about that? He sued them.
To get him to stop doing that?
Yeah, because one of his crappy books or whatever was on Internet Archive, and
fuckity wuckity. All my money. Man, that guy sucks. Okay, so this is great. New York Times today. Colleges want to know more about you and your identity. With affirmative action banned, application essays ask about quote unquote life experience. The one place at admissions where discussing race is still explicitly legal. Now, I think it was Roberts that just basically just blew the whole thing by, entering on the record like, well, you could just, well, anyways, let me get to so here's the big shocker thing. So the prompt when you apply to Sarah Lawrence College, which is the most expensive college in the United States. It's the most liberal college in the world. I mean, it's the most liberal college in the world. It's in New York City. It's ultra expensive. It's the place. This is the prompt for your admissions essay. Describe how you believe your goals for a college education might be impacted, influenced, or affected by the Supreme Court's decision on affirmative action. This is like did you eat breakfast? Like, this is like the did you eat breakfast day for the affirmative action thing. Like, imagine if affirmative action bill hadn't been passed. Then what would you have written on your on your college admission essay?
I mean, it's clever. Yeah, it's clever.
Do you remember the C. Thomas Howell movie Soul Man, where the premise of the movie is that he dresses up like a brother to I don't know if he's going to college or it was he was a C. Thomas Howell stars as a white male law student who pretends to be black in order to qualify for a scholarship. This is in 1986. So what you do now is you're just going to do the C. Thomas Howell method. And I saw one of the solutions. They said we can just have people have to do video like a video interview with the with the applications board to make sure that we can get the racial quotas on. Just see, like, just get some shoe polish and Northam yourself up, and you just this is I identify this way. If you say that's wrong, you're committing a hate crime.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there's not. This is just something to put on your radar. Like, I don't know how long it's been, but they've already got their way around it. Who knows if there'll be lawsuits, blah, blah, but maybe this is just the next step in the story, but something to be aware of. Let's keep moving.
Elon Musk, if you were unfairly treated by your employer due to posting or liking something on this platform, Twitter or X, formerly known as Twitter, we will fund your legal bill. No limit. Please let us know. I thought this was an overlooked promise. I don't know if whatever. He's a mercurial billionaire. He might decide to forget about it a week later. But this is one of those things that you can. This is one of those any way you can wield the court system against your enemies, and do it with civil law instead of criminal law is solid gold. Like if he was actually committed to spending money to do this, you could make a difference here. You could make them afraid to fire people over tweets.
Okay, so this is perfect. So this comes from our friend at InBlock Press. Subscribe to InBlock Press. I don't know exactly. I know you could search for that on Twitter. I don't know what else I can say about finding it, but I know you can find it on Twitter. BLOC Press on Twitter. Well, he did the ultimate on this, and he had just a great analysis on there where he said that Elon is basically there's two parts of patronage. The one part of patronage is sort of maintaining power, but the other part is getting power. And the getting power thing is you have to find sort of patronage opportunities to make yourself a patron. And so the easiest way to make yourself a patron is to protect people. And he has this great article where he lays out exactly like all three ways that he is using Twitter to make himself a patron in every like legal sense of the term. So first off, what he's going to do is protect you from like basically online censorship, the SPLC and stuff like that. You want protection? You want to be able to speak your mind on the internet? Well, you got to come to me. If you come to me on Twitter, I will back you up. I'll use lawsuits. I won't ban you frivolously, and I'll take care of you. Number two, I'm going to pay you. I have to pull up my own little graphic here all along. I didn't make the graphic originally, but patron provides three things. Number one, protection. So we just established that. Number two is money. You're going to get paid. You post hot tweets. You're going to get a check. You're going to get that money. Number three, InBlock Press established this. I don't remember exactly how he established that, but he's got number three in there too. But now you're going to have to, now he's going to be your patron. You're going to have to be a good client. I don't know. It was pretty perfect.
Yeah. I mean, this is not super, well, it is super important. There's one function of Twitter that is important. Being able to have a means to communicate, especially at least semi-anonymously with people, is very important, like both socially and politically. Like a big part of Trump's success in 2016 was social media. He was able to directly speak to his voters. They did a pretty good job of stopping him from doing that. If he would,
a friend says our slur is back.
Yeah,
that's huge.
Yeah. I'd still be careful. Like if Trump in Trump's 2024 campaign, is he still banned from Facebook, or did they unban him? Does anybody know? Twitter might be the only place he could still, and Truth Social might be the only place he could still connect with people. That makes a difference. Now it makes less of a difference because he already has the political machine now, but he couldn't have made it without social media. So just providing a place for your people to communicate and organize themselves, that's important. But also, like, it is also a patron thing to. I don't know, give your people a platform to demean your opponents, and they can't do anything about it. Like, the other side understands this very well. They do it all the time. Like, if you go on Reddit.com, you can say whatever you want about Republicans. You can say whatever you want about Christians, about white people. It's allowed. You can say you want to do physical harm to them and not get banned for it in some cases. The reverse is not true. You're not allowed to say those things about their protected classes.
Maybe not the coolest thing that the mafia ever did, but the mafia would make magazines for gay people. The funny part was it would be a gay magazine, gay content, and then just suddenly like 10% of the pages were talking shit about J. Edgar Hoover for no reason, just because they just added that at the printing press. Well, anyways,
I never heard this story.
Yeah,
that's also a patron, like a thing that the patron can do for your clients. I've said it many times before. Another one is you allow, like, if you control the legal system in your location, you can let your clients commit crimes and physically harm the clients of your opponents, and you see that all across the country now.
like we got away with mock lynching Jussie Smollett.
Yeah. Yeah, that was all I have on the Elon Musk thing. It could, he might forget about it in a week. It'll be a more important story when you see the first Twitter-funded lawsuit.
Okay, let's a quick one, then Gamers Nexus.
By the way, we didn't cover this last week, but there was a literal gamer uprising in New York like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I don't know about gamer.
Well, yeah, that streamer said he was going to give out like 300 PlayStations, and then he either didn't do it or didn't show up or whatever, and a riot started.
Yeah.
Well, people were calling on Twitter a gamer uprising. I thought that was funny.
Yeah. So first, real quick, Baldur's Gate 3. So this is.
I'm sorry, Fredo, in advance.
So, I mean, this is funny. So first off, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 are basically the best games ever made. They don't have a ton to do with Baldur's Gate 3. It's totally different people. It's not even the same kind of system and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't think they're all that related. However, it does. Well, anyways, so this new game comes out, Baldur's Gate 3. And it's not like, I've talked to people that have bought it and all this kind of thing. It's not like the most mind-blowing thing ever if you take into account like every video game ever made. However, first off, this is like a full-featured game with like a long storyline you can play, many characters you can choose, lots of different armor and weapons to use, and you could play it however you want. A lot of stuff at the very beginning, people were posting there was like gay stuff in the game. However, they've done like the internal code has some way to radio home base and tell home base what people are choosing, and like 99% of players are choosing the heterosexual normal path.
Yeah, well, you can have all these choices and whatever, these weird.
You're not forced into doing any of that stuff.
And like everybody just makes like a Henry Cavill lookalike guy, and then they date this character who Malcolm has just been spamming to us in DMs over and over again.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I haven't played. I just assumed it was going to be awful because every one of these kind of games in the last 10 years has been, but apparently this one's supposed to be good, so I might actually have to play it. You could play it multiplayer. Maybe we should stream it.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Did you ever play Baldur's Gate 2?
You know that I did, man. Yes.
Okay.
I told you the other day.
Stonebreaker. I love that game. Okay. So, people saying that they're playing Carrie like Brian says she's playing it right now. That's perfect. Yeah. So, the games came out, and like, but the story happened is, so first off, so I thought, I was sweet in the beginning. I was like, there's no way this game's going to be good because there hasn't been a good game in 10 years. Remember, like we're old, but it's like,
well, there have been good games in the last 10 years, but none of the Dungeons and Dragons role-playing games.
No, but I mean, in terms of this. So, I mean,
right.
Could you imagine, like, if I was like 18 years old and no good game came out from like when I was 8 to 18, that would have sucked balls. You know what I'm saying? That would have been like, but like,
would have been a gamer genocide. Would have been.
But that's what that's the world these kids are growing up in. However, so the thing about this game was that, so remember, it's full feature. There's a story, there's all these characters, there's all this equipment, weapons, and armor, which that shouldn't mean it. Like, if you're 40, you're like, well, of course there is. Why wouldn't there be? Well, because games don't do that anymore. They give you a shitty little bitty game, and then you have to microtransaction everything. You gotta buy, like, if you want a set of armor, you gotta pull your credit card out. You don't just go kill a monster. You gotta buy that armor.
Don't people, I don't know about this. That seems like the thing where people would figure out ways to, like, do you remember, like, in the old days of video games, you could get like bootleg
Game
copies
Genie?
of the games?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like there's nothing like that
It
around.
doesn't work anymore. You have to be connected to the internet the whole time.
It's what they call a live service game, Fredo. It is connected to the internet all the time, and there are the quote unquote benefits to this, but it's mostly a way to make sure you can do this.
Gotcha.
Internally, the games are considered a marketplace now. So, like, that game you buy at the store, that's not what you play. You buy a marketplace that lets you purchase things, little experiences and shit like that. And also, once they get done with the game, it disappears. You literally cannot ever play it ever again. That's how all video games are done now. Now, on top of that, all the Western studios are all full of diversity hires and, all these ESG directives that, like, they suck. We talked about, like, a week or two ago that something to do with Chapo or whatever, where there was this thing about, like, games shouldn't have to be fun at all. You should just buy product. If you want the game to actually be enjoyable for your children or whatever, you're against the workers that work for the software companies, blah, blah, blah. Well, that was how things have been going for a while. These companies have been, by the way, the New Vegas thing is hilarious. How many years ago did the New Vegas come out?
20? I don't think it's been 20, but it's been close.
Well, New Vegas is still the most discussed game on YouTube. Like, if you want to, like, you can update
13 years.
You can upload a video that are like tips and tricks on playing New Vegas. That's like the most popular stuff, and it's fucking old. It's really, really, really old. I don't know. That's totally insane. Anyways, and I'm sure that's not true anymore now that Baldur's Gate 3's come out. The Baldur's Gate 3 came out like this thing of the years past. You don't have to pull out your wallet for anything. You just play the game. If you want new armor, you go kill a monster. You don't pay. You don't buy it. And all of these American studios, and of course this came out of Europe. It came out of Belgium. And so all these American studios have been shitting bricks and writing articles as fast as they can saying, please do not think that this is how video games are supposed to be. This is a one-time deal for the rest of your life, because we ain't changing shit. You will never ever get another game like Baldur's Gate 3 unless that company makes it.
Have they found a way yet to say that, like, Baldur's Gate 3 oppresses minorities or, like, isn't respectful of women, or have they come up with that yet? Because usually that's the go-to. If you either they use that one, like, I call it the Ghostbusters strategy, because that's where it started with the girl Ghostbusters that no one liked, and that, like, not liking it was indicative of that. But they can do it the other way around too. Like, if you prefer something else to the thing they want you to be consuming, the same sort of, like, rhetoric applies.
Well, they have a hard time because, first off, this game is just so clearly better than everything else, and also they act like this is the only game that's came out in like 20 years. really like the other games were Japanese games. So Elden Ring came out, same thing. You didn't have to buy any stuff. That's a huge part of this is literally that you just put the game in and you play it. That you're not constantly have to buy more Zenny or game tokens, all this bullshit. Like that's a huge deal, especially if you're a kid. You can't like you can get your parents to buy the game, but then you ain't got no credit card. You can't constantly keep chipping out all this damn money.
Well, the really the thing is that they're not. That's bad. I agree. Like I don't like that, and
that's really bad.
It is really bad. But like I'll counterpoint this, and I'll relate this as I always do to the game that I still play, the NBA games. Like they do that, like they nickel and dime you in that game too. But the game's so damn good. It's really, really good. It's really, really fun to play against other people. It's a fun game to play. So you're like, damn it. Well, I got the sons of bitches got me again. I got to shell out. I'm going to shell out $50 every year for a roster update or whatever. The thing is, these games aren't even good. Like they're nickel and diming you. They have dumb stories. They're basically Netflix movies that you play on your Xbox or whatever. Like that's the big thing. Like if the Baldur's Gate game had microtransactions, if you could buy a special hamster to put on Minsk's shoulder or whatever, that wouldn't be good, but it would still be a good game. People would still love it and play it. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe. I mean, it really does take something out of the experience.
Let me just throw this out here. This is the last time there was a big the AAA game controversy that I remember was this game. That Last of Us game came out, and this is one of the female lead characters of the game. In the original game, you play like the white guy with the beard, the typical video game protagonist, right?
Now you get Bill Goldberg in a wig.
Well, but I don't know if you know this. I didn't play that game. Whatever, I didn't play either one of them. So hit me up if I'm wrong. In the first game, you play like the typical video game protagonist, because this game came out a little while ago. It was not in the before time, but it was closer to the before time. In the new game, that character I just showed you, that lady, beats him to death. The protagonist of the last game, the man, she beats him to death with like a tire iron or something. I don't know. Like that's a plot point in that. This is just this woman who's got four arms that a lot of guys spend hours and hours at the gym trying to get. Like, why do they do this? Why do they make these characters? They make intentionally ugly video game in like character story driven things where like the whole point is like, yeah, it's like almost like a movie. You're making choices, you're doing these things, and they're butt ugly. Like isn't that one of the things? Like one of the things about this Baldur's Gate game, they just have like attractive looking women in them too. Just some normal looking women, and like there'll be like a blue lady with devil wings, but she's hot. So a 13-year-old boy's on board with that.
Well, they went back and made those characters in that game you're talking about. They would have to like, they actually brought in a guy that was like making them uglier because, just a stand, like, it wasn't like, they really went out of their way to do that. They do that because this is one of those classic things. It's like, if men like it, it's bad. So you have to do something about that. But yeah, anyways, so this is being treated, and they're trying to do this like, well, this is the only game that's ever happened like this, so don't get your hopes up. Well, no, they did this with Elden Ring. What they're saying, because they can't really get away with saying this game sucks. So what they're saying is that this is like a labor rights issue. So what they're saying is like, you're oppressing the studios, which, by the way, it was brought up that a lot of these Western studios are unionized, and they're saying, well, we can't really make a game like this with a union studio.
One of the funniest things
by the way, if you're a gamer, not my fucking problem.
One of the funniest things I ever saw was when they were talking about whatever latest game that kind of flopped and everybody was supposed to be realized, and they're like, well, you know, oh no, it was GTA, it was the new Grand Theft Auto game. Remember, there were leaks about this, and they were talking about the development and how it's taking so long, and they're like, well, we've really gotten away from the old evil model where like we would have crunch time and you'd have like programmers working really hard to get a game out. We've moved beyond that, and we care more about labor rights now. And the people who were working for Rockstar were talking about how great the culture change was. It's like, well, okay, but you realize you're going to put out shit. You're going to put out a crappier product. Like XCOM was made by like two guys in the basement sweating in Sweden or whatever. Or no, I think it was like UK, right? It was a labor of love where someone spent months and months of their life toiling away to create this thing that was so amazing that you remember it years later when you're an adult. They're not going to be able to do that if you have to have a person who's on site. Like, my job is to professional like touchdown artist. I go and make sure that all the women are a little bit uglier. You have those people. You have the community relations expert, whatever. You have all these people who are there like political commissars. You're not going to be able to create anything good. This is not going to happen. And that's kind of what they're saying with this Baldur's Gate game, right? Like, hey, these guys are in Europe, or the Henry Cavill movie, TV show Witcher, the Witcher games, right? Weren't these made out of the country too? They weren't made in the United States, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you could you make those games in America now?
No.
Yeah.
No, of course not.
Well, you could if you did. I mean, it would be, you'd have to. The problem would be distribution, because you could like, it is still possible for, like, let's say a few guys to get together and spend a lot of time and independently produce a game. You know what I mean? Like, there are tools for that, but the problem would be getting distribution, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the big problem is if you're trying to make, a game that has like really good graphics and whatever. I think the Witcher was the last one that everybody proclaimed being great. You had this big world. You had all these detailed stuff. You need a lot of manpower to do that. You need a lot of money to do that. It's kind of like you and I can't make a Marvel Avengers movie. We could make a movie, and like this, like there are still. Like when I said Blog Beef that there were good games in the last 10 or 15 years, a lot of them were these labor of love games made by like sometimes one guy, like the game RimWorld, hot seller on Steam. Literally one guy made that game. Stardew Valley, that was another game one dude made. He did all this stuff. He made all the little guys, the little music, everything.
It didn't fall out.
I imagine the throwback to an earlier episode where we found all those Hitler games on Steam where you're trying to have sex with Hitler. Those were labors of love right there.
Yeah. Listen, Fallout was one guy that stayed in the basement for a long time, and then he showed him his stuff, and they gave him a team to finish it. Fallout 1.
That makes sense.
So yeah. I mean, I don't know. Riposte Twitch brings up the Japanese studios. I mean, what's left of the Japanese studios? Capcom hasn't. I really doubt. I don't know for sure. I don't think they made Street Fighter 6 because I mean they sure didn't make Street Fighter 4. So, Konami basically just got rid of their studio. They turned all their game guys into churn out pachinko machines. Like 15 years ago, there was more money in making pachinko machines than there was in video games.
What's pachinko?
It's Fredo, do you know what it is?
I'm thinking of that game on The Price is Right, but I don't think that's what
Plinko?
Right.
Yeah, so pachinko is like Plinko, except it's in this little. It's like a cross between Plinko and a slot machine. Like a slot machine.
So it's like, is it like for like low end, like gambling halls and stuff?
Yeah. Oh man, I'm not gonna go into That's a pachinko machine. Is that what that is?
Yeah, but that one looks really crazy.
Yeah. If you go into every gas station in the South, they have the video poker machine.
Yeah, we don't have them in Florida.
Oh, did your governor get rid of them?
No, it's because the Indians have the sole right to that in Florida, the Seminoles. So you have to go to one of their casinos.
Oh, that's one of those things. Like sometimes they do this by accident. Like they'll make things based, but not on purpose. Like that's good. I'm glad of that for you because it's horrible. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. No,
it's a loophole to get around anti-gambling laws. Quavo with us.
Yeah, and there's more money in that than anything. You can see that like sports has totally been taken over by these, fan bets and all this bullshit. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know. There's not much else to say. It's a funny story. Do we have any other stories?
Well, no. Well, there's one I was gonna.
Well, we still got time.
I got to review this with Fredo. So yeah, I'll hit the button. D.C. Circuit Court revives viewpoint discrimination suit against the District of Columbia. The district allowed Black Lives Matter protesters to violate the city's defacement ordinance, but enforce the law against groups with a different political message. What happened was in D.C. in 2020, they let BLM go buck wild, do whatever they want, and then they arrested pro-life people. And in this case, it was the Frederick Douglass Society, that's like a black anti-abortion group. And they were...
Don't let me forget to do Gamers Nexus after this.
Oh, okay. The judge ruled that it's a selective enforcement claim, that's hard to prove, right, Fredo?
Yeah, for sure, because there's like a general concept of prosecutorial discretion.
Yeah, well, the judge said, actually, yeah, the case was thrown out, and then it was appealed, and the circuit court said, actually, yeah, you know what, you do have a case here, take it to trial. Like, this seems to, like, obviously, the District of Columbia will fight this tooth and nail, and they're probably not going to get a ton of help. But this is another one of those little wedge situations where, you sue your municipality for treating you differently than they treat other people. It seems like it's a W either way. Even if you lose, you're basically codifying that you're a second-class citizen.
Yeah, you're codifying that you're a second-class citizen, and you are creating a bunch of aggravation for the city too, because like they, even if they win, they have to. The ruling will have like certain things within it that they'll have to comply with to keep doing it, and then they'll have to like watch their P's and Q's, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, the judge said, the First Amendment prohibits the government from favoring some speakers over others. Access to the public forum must be open to everyone and every message on the same terms. The district may act to prevent defacement of public property, but it cannot open up its streets and sidewalks to some viewpoints and not others. This is a basic rule of law thing, which, as I think everybody is beginning to understand, is dead. It won't be dead forever. This is not... This shouldn't be too much of a black pill. Like, the rule of law is not going to vanish into the ether and never come back. Like, it will return. Like, look at the president of El Salvador. All it takes is literally one leader who's willing to do what you have to do, and you can get back there. But I think that I think everybody kind of agrees, not just because of the stuff that they're doing to the former president of the United States, but like what's going on in a lot of the cities. The rule of law, it's not something. This used to be something that you could count on everybody to agree on, agree upon. Like, as a principle, this is something that's important. We have to have this. Our society can't function without it. I don't think everybody would agree on that anymore. I think there are a lot of people who would openly say, actually, no, we should just use the power of the state to benefit my buddies. And,
I would.
I was going to say, hey, you don't hate the player, hate the game, right? Well, but you got to play, even if you don't like the rules. You don't get to opt out.
Yeah.
That's all. continue
sure.
the game to cover the gamer genocide.
All right. I do. We have this just in. This just in. So I haven't done any research on this. This was from yesterday. I can't believe I missed this. New leaked audio of Matt Walsh arguing for the superiority of the Anglo-Saxon race. He said there's a white genocide. He says the 14 words. The only solution is to have more Anglo-Saxon children.
Yeah, I mean that's funny because if you, is that a joke or seriously?
No, it's not a joke. I haven't listened to audio, but
it's funny because if you like you can be fired for your job or whatever. But like there's nothing on the face of it wrong with saying actually my people are the best people in the world and we should have lots of babies and there should be a bunch of us everywhere. Like there's nothing wrong with saying that. That's like a normal human.
Which people you are.
Yeah, I know. I know functionally how it works out. But it's just funny that like that's an accusation that actually can work and be actionable in the United States. It's pretty funny. Someone said he's Irish. Yeah, fair enough. We'll put an asterisk beside the Anglo-Saxon part then.
We make it look easy.
All right, let's hear the gamer story. Let's go.
Yeah. Sorry. I just like the idea that he just lost his mind and he just started, belting it out and stuff. That's kind of hubris.
Okay.
Let's go. Linus Tech Tips. I have never liked. You aware of him, both of you guys?
He's like a YouTube. He reviews electronics and computer stuff, right?
Yeah. Linus Sebastian. He looks like a guy in like a emo band from like the early 2000s. Speaking of which, one of the ways that as soon as I saw him get all them fucking earrings, that was the moment I didn't trust him. What is that? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Why would you, as like a 45-year-old man, get like 5-6 rings in one ear?
Yeah, that's bad. So multiple, man with multiple rings in the ear, bad. Also, the worst man or woman is the septum piercing. Don't trust it. Don't like it. No one should have it. It's bad. If you're listening to the show and you're thinking about doing this, stop thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that hole never goes away, by the way.
And by the way, like, if he was like, the touring guitar keyboard guy for the Rolling Stones or something, I probably wouldn't even say nothing. But like, that's not your job. You're supposed to be this electronics journalist or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so this guy is kind of a clown, but he had this big big YouTube show. He had like the biggest YouTube show for reviewing sort of consumer electronics, specifically things like computer components, specifically for gamer stuff. And I'm guessing it was probably a charisma thing, I guess. I mean, I don't like him, but you got to admit when the guy gets that many views and stuff, he's probably got a lot of charisma, blah blah blah.
Yeah, he I think it's also volume. He put out a lot of content. He's pushing out the videos fast and furious, and that gets you somewhere.
Yeah,
and especially in the YouTube algorithm.
I didn't see where the footage first came out, but like, which by the way, I've always been a Gamers Nexus guy. I've always subscribed to Gamers Nexus. Big Steve over at Gamers Nexus has always been like, this is the high IQ version of any of this stuff. I mean, his shit is solid. It's always, I mean, he really, really does things right. And Linus is the low IQ version. Well, Linus video popped up recently, and like he was talking mad shit, and he was talking about how that Linus Tech Tips, which is now this corporation, and which, by the way, he's hired like all these industry, like, so remember the point of this show is to review. So Linus Tech Tips, people don't know, The show is that you review basically these very, very expensive components for computers that gamers use, like video cards and stuff. There's a lot like, so for whether people not like Linus or Gamers Nexus or whatever, you have to go watch this stuff when you get ready to pull your wallet out, because these things cost several hundreds of dollars and you need to know if it's a POS or not.
Let me translate this for Fredo. Fredo, imagine if it was like 1970 and there was a guy, he made television episodes where he reviewed the various carburetors and engines for performance and say, actually, the new Chevy engine gets this many more horsepower. And he found objective measurements to which components were the best part to put in your car. That's what this guy does.
That makes sense. Like he's doing independent testing. Like,
well, he's supposed to be doing that.
Well, he's supposed to be. Is it like, for old dudes like me, is this like the new version of JD Power and Associates? Remember, like you could or Consumer Reports, you get the magazine and they would run an independent test on something and you could compare if it could be a power tool, an appliance, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Especially the only thing is that basically any of those old stuffy services could not really hang with any stuff like this because of the time requirement and just knowing like
it moves too fast, or it used to. Like it is important because like if you're going to build a gaming computer, you're going to spend, like, if you're building a high end one, you're going to spend like $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If not even a high end, like a middle of the road one now is like $1,000 easy. And that's some scratch.
Especially, so the Gamers Nexus, what they do really, really, really great is testing computer cases. And what computer case, like the case you buy can like really, really, really affect your performance.
Is that like, because of the cooling?
Yeah.
But there's different cooling, how many components you can fit, how loud it is. Like them putting a panel in. And they screw that they screw this up all the time. And if you're a consumer, you don't really you'll know if you buy a computer case, there's still companies that they'll put like just flat plexiglass in the front of the machine, which is like really bad. Like it should be like a mesh to allow flow through there. But anyways, you can really screw that stuff up. And these people, they actually test it, and it's tedious to test these things. And you can watch how Steve at Gamers Nexus does it. He does it perfect. He does it great. Well, anyways, this guy, Linus, he popped off his mouth and he said that these other guys, they don't really test their stuff as thoroughly as he does. Now, this was a really stupid thing to say because I don't think even people that liked him considered him like anything other than like, well, he kind of reviews stuff, but he does it in a fun way with more personality. So we sort of let him slide on how accurate he is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he's not a nuts and bolts guy. He's a song and dance man.
Right. But he started talking shit about how his shit is actually legit. So Steve at Gamers Nexus started put up this video where he showed like basically all his reviews have huge errors in them. Furthermore, he hired one of the last marketing guys for Asus. And then now all of a sudden Asus stuff gets gets all the best review, gets all their shit is 5 stars and all stuff. Huge, you just have to watch the video. Just the insane amount of I forget the old radio term, but
payola,
intense amount. Yeah, thank you. Intense amount of payola going on. And literally they got him on video. He was saying talking about how before he reviews, he has to consider his industry relationships and shit. That's the fucking opposite of what you're supposed to do, bro. You're supposed to be on behalf of the people. You're not supposed to worry about what Chevy thinks about the carburetor we're doing.
Didn't they give a terrible review to a mouse, like a high-end mouse, because it was it's not a very good mouse. It doesn't move very smoothly, and they hadn't taken the plastic off the bottom of it. Yeah. That's a pretty funny. That's a pretty funny mistake to make. It'd be like if you were reviewing this cereal or whatever, and you didn't know how to open the bag, and you're like, this cereal is terrible. It's no taste at all.
Yeah,
there was a really similar scandal to this recently. So Custom 1911s. Like there'll be similar guys that do the review, or semi-customs really. They'll do the reviews. And I think so one of the guys, like it was like a similar leak type situation. And he started giving bad reviews to Cabot and ACW. Like for people who aren't aware, like ACW's Alchemy Custom Weaponry, that was like an independent shop. They make really, really beautiful, like retro inspired semi-custom 1911s instead of making them look modern. And then Cabot is like a combination of retro and modern. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, Cabot bought ACW, but they're still separate lines because they have like a different design aesthetic. Anyway, apparently, like, you know, Cabot / ACW wasn't giving this guy as much like free stuff to try out anymore. And so their guns started getting trashed like in his reviews. And I forget how it leaked out. I don't remember all the details of this crap, but it eventually leaked out that like that was the reason why, because he asked them for something and they were just like, no, we're not going to send you that. And then like his editorial stance toward their stuff did like a 180.
I think I know who you're talking about. This, you know, also in the gun, it would be like, so Larry Vickers is not objective. I think most people like Larry Vickers. He's cool. He was in Delta Force. He has some deals. He has some deals with Glock and a bunch of other people and stuff. And if you ask him, he'll say Glock is the best and all the guns that he's does stuff with. You know, he worked with, I think he worked with HK and stuff like that. However, if Larry Vickers started like putting his foot down and saying that he's like the ultimate authority in like this kind of journalism and stuff like that, that would be too far. He was like, whoa, Larry, that's not your thing, man. And that's kind of what this Linus guy did. But plus, so all these mistakes and stuff, like so if you like, part of this is like something Steve brought up was that these mistakes show that whoever was looking at this stuff didn't know what they were looking at. Like, let's say there was a review of 2 carburetors and the reviewer in the graph, one carburetor made like 300 more horsepower, made 400 horsepower. And then the next carburetor made like 100. Well, if you know what you're doing, you'd be like, well, something was wrong, or, you know, this, like, okay, that could happen if you had like 2 huge carburetors and 1 single barrel. But if they were both sort of similar products, one would not make 300 more horsepower than the other unless you were doing something wrong. And that was going on here. So Steve was like, whoever was like looking at these, second off, like they wouldn't pull video. Like when you'd say, hey, you have a big mistake here in your review, they would not pull it down. If you threatened to sue them, they would write a comment. They wouldn't pin the comment. So like, it doesn't, whatever your correction doesn't even show up. But then the real cherry on top was that, some company sent them, a liquid cooling block. So this is a piece of precisely machined metal that sits on top of the processor that you push liquid through, and then it'll cool the thing. Now these things, they have to be machined to very, very, very tight tolerances. And so they're not a universal fit item. And they sent Linus one for a 4090 chip, and Linus used it on 3090. That's not what it goes on. So it's not going to make the surface of this cooling block is not going to make direct contact with the chip. Therefore, it's not going to cool. Okay. So they went ahead and ran the review, and Linus Tech Tips said, this thing sucks. This is the worst cooling block in the world. Okay. So
this GM manifold sucks on my Ford Fairlane.
Yeah. Now, you know, this was a like a pre-release product. This was one of their prototypes, and they wanted it back, which is that's not bizarre at all. So they said, we'll let you borrow it for review. And anyways, so well, they commented under it. They said, hey, we love you, Linus, but that's not the right thing that it goes on. and they didn't say anything. And Linus went around, kept trashing this product. And so, they said, well, we told you we want it back. Can we have it back? Well, come to find out, not only, so he had given this shitty review to it, then he went and auctioned it off. He auctioned it off. That's some pretty,
like on eBay or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I saw the story. Like, first of all, they said this is a terrible. I'm not sure it was that product or one of the other ones that he screwed up. He's like, yes, it's terrible. Nobody should ever buy it. And then he like auctioned it off for I don't know if it was a charity event or whatever. Charity. And they said the company said, okay, you need to give us this thing back. It's like a prototype. It's really important. We need you to send it back to us. And he said, okay, I will. And then sold it. Basically sold it. And that seems like that could be legally actionable, right? Like, well, you robbed these people this expensive electronic component, said a bunch of bad stuff about it, and then gave it away. I think might be literally a crime. I'm not sure.
Right. So he auctioned off, quote unquote, to charity, which that means that blows your stuff up. But as the Steve guy said, that's not any better. Now you're just sort of roping more people into this theft by auctioning off to charity. You're taking an innocent bystander and putting them inside this little thing you've done. Okay, he's done that. So Steve at Gamers Nexus, he puts out a video of this. Linus, like 2 or 3 hours later, posts this crazy unhinged rant, and he says, well, we had already agreed to pay them back for that component. No, that was a total lie. He never did. He never even talked to them. Like 5 minutes after he posted the unhinged rant, then he sent an email to the company and said, we'll pay you. Like, this dude is just a huge piece of shit. And it's good to see. I mean, he hasn't backed down at all. Hasn't backed down at all. Just going full bore. And I don't think he understands, like, maybe he gets a lot of views and stuff, but the dude at Gamers Nexus, I mean, he keeps his shit perfect. You're going to have a hard time going up against him.
He could be just honestly just like a personality trait too. I like when I hear stories like this, I always think about Pete Rose, right? Like Pete Rose could have gotten like in the Hall of Fame. He could have gotten back in the graces of baseball so much faster if he had just said like, yeah, I never bet against my own team, but what I did was still wrong. It was terrible. And I'm going to check myself into rehab for gambling addiction. You know what I mean? But he stuck with this line the whole time that he never did anything wrong. He shouldn't have been punished. He was the victim. You know what I mean? Like that. Well, it's that kind of attitude. I feel like, and I don't know. It strikes me as similar, but I don't know this situation as well, obviously.
Well, so there is that, but the only thing is that like the majority of the things are things that he couldn't really change back tomorrow if he wanted to. Like the fact that he's filled up his company full of these like pale guys that,
okay, gotcha.
Like, he can't run his company right like tomorrow. He's got to make huge changes to actually run his company ethically.
Black pill answer, you Walmart, you don't get the best of anything at Walmart, but Walmart's the biggest game in town. You don't get the best hamburger at McDonald's.
Yeah, but no, those are different because you do actually for the money, right?
Well,
like I'm not like a fan of either one of those two things, but like they actually do provide the best in theory, at least in a specific category, right? Well, like a McDonald's burger is still like $1.10 or something like that. This guy, I mean, it's different because the YouTube shows are all free, right? So like, I don't know that he even reaches the level of those. Example, if that makes sense.
You're missing something here, and it's not your fault because you don't know this. You don't know this world. I don't know it that well either, but I know that. Like, let's imagine that you and I were both. We'll say with something we both like, gun content creators, and your channel was once a week you put out an excellent video where you talk about all the stuff you can do, like you're modifying your stars, you're talking about like the history of the Beretta and blah blah blah. And me, I put out 5 videos a day about gun stuff. Now, and my video quality is a lot worse than yours. It's not crap, but it's measurably worse. We'll say it's 1/5. We'll say whatever. If you put out 5 times as many videos as me, and my videos are all 1/5 of the quality, I might win out because I'm just getting the algorithm wants that. It wants content. It wants content blasting in your brain every 15 seconds. So you'll get rewarded for like the scale of your YouTube show. Now that's not always true, because if you there are people on YouTube who specifically, like, they put out a video every 3 months and like 20 million people watch it, and that's their business model. But for most people, it's not that. It's, I'm going to blast this crap out nonstop, and that's how I'm going to stay in the spotlight. That could work for him as a business model. That's what he's doing now. And he made his company's worth like $500 million now, right?
He got
$500 million for
Yes,
making goofy tech reviews on YouTube.
Yes, sir.
Linus got offered like $100 million or something like that, like cash for the company. That's what I mean. That's what
I think he has like investments. It's like, what, that was like 500 million.
Oh, it could be. It could be.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous amount of money. I was shocked when I heard it too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the other things that's funny, I mean, there's nothing to directly connect this right now, but I mean, someone posted like around the same time as his company got sold. He posted one of his new tech tips, and it was it said to get interracially married.
Okay.
And
what?
Yeah, that was one of the new tech tips. And then he had a new transgender on his show.
All right. Well,
I'm just saying, that's that bag of money, it always comes.
line of sex tips.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he didn't have stuff like that until the company.
Yeah, exactly. You take that money,
That day will come. You know what I'm saying? That's funny.
All right. Well, is that it?
Yeah.
Anything else, Fredo?
I everybody should go subscribe to Gamers Nexus. It's a great channel. He's a true gamer, and Linus never was.
He knows a lot of stuff about like the physics of how the components work. I like that. He can tell you how the heat sink or like how this particular model of cooler works. I think it's always to some extent interesting to see somebody talk about something they're knowledgeable in mechanically, even if you don't care that much about it. I'm not going to ever buy an expensive video card, but I don't know. It's cool to watch somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Watch just like everybody loves Project Farm. Project Farm, the way he tests this stuff is awesome. By the way, Linus made a screwdriver. It's supposed to be the greatest screwdriver in the world. It was not as good as a Snap-on one.
I wouldn't trust a tech guy to make a freaking screwdriver as good as Snap-on. Like when you're using a computer, don't you use like a little jeweler's screwdriver?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the quality of those matters, but it's like, I'm not saying it don't matter, but like, a company like Snap-on's making something that you're not just working in a air-conditioned little space. It's got to work as well in an air-conditioned little space as it works in a wet, hot, you know what I mean? Like, or cold, or, sitting outside. It's got to hold up a lot better.
Yes, and he would quote that his price was so much better than Snap-on. The thing is, you can always do that Snap-on, because Snap-on's prices are listed that way because they don't charge interest. So if you go to Snap-on truck and you bring cash, you will pay like half that price. So that was always bullshit too. Don't buy LTT screwdriver. Go buy Snap-ons. Go pay cash. You get that shit for $70. You have the best screwdriver in the world. Ratcheting screwdriver in the world. That's why. Yeah, ratcheting screwdriver. Anyways, Steve from Gamers Nexus, the videos about how he tests this stuff is awesome. Holy, it's amazing what that guy does to test equipment. That's like a whole engineering in and of itself. It's really cool.
Long, luxurious hair.
Yeah.
He's got the gamer mane.
Yeah. Anyways, all right, guys.
Yep. Good night, y'all.